Iran says it has officially abandoned tit-for-tat retaliation, now striking back at least 1.5x as hard for every US attack, with IRGC warning disrupting the security of the Strait of Hormuz will be a heavy price for the invading US military. So once again, we have a hot war, it looks like today. So obviously not the best news, but this is what's happening. And Trump has come out here saying that it is fake news, that the Islamic Republic of Iran and the USA have stopped talking a few days ago. He says it's false. The conversations between us have been going on continuously, including 4 days ago, 3 days ago, 2 days ago, 1 day ago, and today, where they lead, one never knows, but I told Iran it's time, one way or another, you make a deal. You've been doing this for 47 years, and it cannot be allowed to go on any longer. And what is he referring to there? Is it 47 years of not trying to get overthrown by the US? Maybe. But we also have this phone call that came in, and this obviously made a huge amount of news over on X, but just in Axios sources say President Trump was pissed during a call with Israeli Prime Minister Netanyahu and told him off. You're effing crazy. You'd be in prison. If it weren't for me, I'm saving your ass. Everybody hates you now. Everybody hates Israel because of this. What the F are you doing? So apparently that was the phone call. That's what's been reported over on X. That got viewed 2.2 million times. And I have to say, look, most people I know are pretty fatigued of this war. And if you guys are as well, just like the video. It's a signal you are fatigued of this conflict and you want it to end. And what else has been going on right now is it's just escalating. So once again, you got launched ballistic missiles towards US bases. We haven't seen any confirmed casualties of US troops yet. If that does come in, I will let you guys know. And it just seems to be escalating. It seems to be hot. So unfortunately, we're looking at a pretty hot 24, 48 hours. The negotiations, if you've been tuning into these videos, they seem to go nowhere. It's literally Groundhog Day, day after day. The same stuff gets repeated by Trump. No progress is made. And the Iranians, what are the Iranians saying amongst all this? You can see in the Telegram, people are giving fire emojis to some of the attacks right here. Saudi Arabia gets hit as well. But here, let's listen into this guy, MB Ghalibaf. He says, this guy's an official speaker of Iran. And he says, in my conversation with my brother, President Nabi Berri, I affirm that if the Israeli aggression against Lebanon continues, we will not only halt the path of negotiations, but we will also be in direct confrontation with the enemy. Long live the resistance, long live the defense of the land, and long live the brotherhood between the Lebanese and Iranian peoples right there. So that's what he's saying. He's the official speaker of the Iranian parliament. And we also have this guy, Saeed, for urgent attention. A ceasefire between Iran and the US constitutes, without any ambiguity, a comprehensive ceasefire across all fronts, including Lebanon. Any violation of this ceasefire on one front shall be considered a violation of it across all fronts. The US and Israel bear responsibility for the consequences of any breach of the truce. So Israel and Lebanon have been locked in a conflict recently. It's been pretty rough. And Iran is saying, they want a ceasefire in Lebanon as well. They want that war to end. And they're saying if it doesn't end, then, they're going to get back into a big hot war with both the US and Iran. And that seems to be unfolding today. So today is going to be a very important day. And it's just going to be interesting to see how it plays out. So, everyone's, obviously going to have physical casualties within the region, but also the global economy. I can't believe this is going to be good for the global stock market and things like that. So S&P 500, even though, look, there is a bit of a disconnect going on, let's be honest. S&P 500 futures, if we open this up today, it doesn't seem to be reacting much at all. It's actually sitting at an all-time high. This has to do with AI, right? So the AI boom going crazy. And let's talk also gold, silver, and let's jump into AI as well, because I have some very, very important things to share with you about copper. But gold holding on, look, sideways trading, volatile market. So this conflict obviously spooking the market to some degree, but gold holding on relatively okay, 4,500. Silver holding on pretty good as well, so $75 right there, but obviously getting spooked. And this is the one we want to talk about. So copper, basically ignoring the FUD, ignoring the noise. And it's looking at, I think it might even be very close to an all-time high. It might be the all-time high. So the all-time high coming in for copper within the last 24 hours, and this is on the backdrop of all this nonsense in the Middle East happening as well. So obviously something special is happening with copper, and I wanted to reveal to you guys some education around this. So let's just bring out some prices. So 6.69, that's an all-time high. It's eclipsed it right here. And why is it going up? Why is the price going up? And what does it mean for long-term people who are interested in metals like copper for the long term? Let's jump straight into the AI. So I've actually ran through a lot of things about this, but the most important things are summed up in this AI. So I've spoken to both Gemini and also Claude, the latest models, and this is a long-term horizon. So even though, look, we were just looking at the price graph, and yes, the short-term graph is looking great, but obviously it's on a bit of an incline, so there could be volatility. But having said that, I wanted to understand it more for like a 10 to 15 year horizon, because this is very important in terms of trends and also in demand. And the important things about copper are this, right? So we are going through a big energy transition at the moment. There's decarbonization. We're seeing a lot of EVs getting built. So electrical vehicles, they're coming online. There is a need for copper, right? So in the actual EVs, there's going to be more and more, this is going to grow, right? So this trend is increasing. We're also seeing this mega trend of AI. So AI in the S&P 500, obviously going to the moon. You're seeing AI stocks go to the moon, but what they're starting to build out are these monster data centers, right? So there's going to be more and more of these monster data centers, and it is very, very much needed that you need a lot of copper in here. So you need lots of electrical power, heavy cooling systems, specialized electronic components. They need to go into copper. So the more of these things that get built out, the more demand comes in for copper, right? Grid modernization. So look, with the AI revolution and the EVs, there's going to be more and more electrical vehicles everywhere, but they need a grid. They need to be charged. They need to be going. There's also going to be a lot of solar coming in, especially into sunny countries. I think Australia's uptake of solar has been very high, and this is expected to, increase over time, right? So millions of tons of copper wiring and transformers. Now, what gets interesting is the supply factor for copper. So if you have a look right here, the copper demand is expected to grow 50% from recent levels. So it's expected to go to 49 million metric tons by the year 2035, right? But it actually might even go higher than that. We'll reveal later in the video why that is the case. But the issue with copper is there is declining ore grades. So it is becoming harder and harder to mine copper. Extracting copper from lower grade ore requires more and more earth, using more energy and securing more water, which increases production costs. So it is becoming more difficult to mine this, right? Not only that, there's been massive underdevelopment into copper, into mineral exploration. And the thing about this is it takes ages to build a new copper mine. So it takes potentially 10 to 15 years from discovery to commercial production. That is ages. That is time the planet might not have. Now, there's also geopolitical environmental risks. That's got to do with Chile and Peru. There are some targeted countries around there. They're going to need to try and focus in on scrap and recycling as well, because obviously there's going to be some very, very demand issues. Big demand issues. One trend we are seeing, look, around the world, we're seeing it right now today, is there's going to be more wars, right? This unfortunately, I have to say, this war is the globe is getting more and more unstable, right? There's civil unrest in the UK. You guys saw the news. You probably saw the news about that knife attack in the UK. Outrageous, right? I think that's going to get worse. And also at the same time, the military industrial complex, right? Ukraine, Russia, Middle East, China, Taiwan, they're only going to be buying more and more copper. So you need this in munitions and ammunitions, high-tech systems, naval infrastructure too. So there's a lot of demand with military as the military ramps up. Now, the substitution of copper is very interesting in the limitation. So one of the key things I want to get through to you is there is aluminium, right? So aluminium is a substitute. It is cheaper and lighter, but it doesn't work perfectly. So if you have a look right here, conductivity versus volume. So aluminium has roughly 60% of the electrical conductivity of copper. So it doesn't work as well. The space constraints. So you can't pack as much aluminium into constricted spaces as you can with copper. So we're talking underground power cables, electric vehicles, you're still going to need copper right there. Copper has also better thermal expansion than aluminium as well. So it's just a tougher metal. It's better used in electrical circuits. And it's just looking better right there. So less fire hazards and also electro migration as well. So in high-powered microelectronics, increasing the electrical resistivity by trying to alloy aluminium and copper raises severe reliability concerns due to electromigration, where the current physically moves atoms, causing device failure. So that's not something you want. So there is concerns about substitutability, right? So it's hard to substitute this. But that's not only it as well. So I wanted to also go deeper into robotics. And one of my kind of theses I have on the world at the moment is, look, you're going to see the development of AI. We're seeing that. The next phase is going to be like the mass production of robots and drones. We're already starting to see this in conflicts. But really, the biggest winner, it's like in the past, the biggest, most powerful countries in the world were the ones who could amass the biggest armies, right? And just overrun the enemy. So you think about like Genghis Khan, big fast army, just overrun, Eastern Europe. And then you think about, even during World War II, the Soviets, they just amassed so many humans and just flooded, pushed west towards Germany, conquered Germany, just on sheer numbers, right? And also during World War II, America was very big. It was very powerful. There was a lot of humans moving into Europe and also, to conquer Japan as well. It was it's a big war of resources, right? So the next war might be more to do with scalable robots. You got to think far into the future, right? So you've got the human armies, which might be a thing of the past. The next army is going to be an army of robots, right? It's going to be an army of drones. Now, this is where copper is going to be needed. And there are some pretty interesting predictions right here. But you're going to need it in the muscles. You're going to need it in the nervous system as well. You're going to need it in the brain, the computing system. You're going to need it in the ecosystem. Now, what's interesting is I actually saw some predictions right here. So there are humanoid robots. We've already seen them on the channel. We've spoken about these. They need 2 to 5 kilograms of copper. And this is going to shift the entire new structural demand for copper right here. And it's unlikely, look, AI is telling me it's unlikely it's going to be substituted away by aluminium, right? Because robots are all about being compact, the weight paradox as well, flexibility and fatigue. And what's interesting is I actually ran the exact same analysis into Claude right here. And this is something Claude came up with. The scale, right? So Morgan Stanley is saying you're going to need about 1 billion robots, roughly 1.6 million tons of copper per year, about 6% of the global's demand, 6% of today's global demand. But then also at the extreme end is going to be Elon Musk, who says there's going to be 10 billion humanoid robots by 2040, right? Which is absolutely huge. So there's how many humans are there on the planet? 7 billion, 8 billion. So there might be 1 for 1 by the year 2040. And if that becomes the case, right, that's going to mean, in a very bullish scenario, it's going to consume the equivalent of about 4 times the current copper global annual production, right? So that's going to need to double the entire world's copper output for robots. So you're going to need to double. So that would require the world's total copper output to double just for robots alone. And this is where the market starts to break a bit. So to sum it up, there's a lot of interesting factors coming in with demand, for supply, for constraints, for substitutability. And one of the most important things I want to get through to you is need as well. So when you benchmark copper against some other types of assets out there, this is not a glamorous metal, right? No one's hyping up copper. When I go to YouTube, you know what people are hyping up? They're hyping up gold. They're hyping up silver. And, I like silver as well. Believe me, silver ranks highly, and it's nothing against gold. But the thing about copper is you just need it, right? And especially if you want to be the leader, like the Game of Thrones king of the planet, you're going to need copper. So I got a feeling in the future, copper is going to be more and more and more sought after as this world goes on, right? So all these things we're watching, wars play out, AI play out, robots play out. In the future, it doesn't matter how much money they print, right? How much inflation exists. Like if you're the person who's going to mass the army of robots or drones, you're going to need copper, right? So this is going to be one of the most critical minerals, I would say. And then I also gave both of these AIs, the question, and I just said to them right here, I said, please analyze every metal like copper, silver, commodities as well. Rank them for best to worst for a 15-year long-term horizon. Explain the rationale behind each, right? And let's just run through these. So number one, right here, copper ranks number one. This is Gemini. Silver number two, right? Uranium number three. Lithium number four. Rare earths number five. Aluminium number six. Nickel number seven. Graphite number eight. And then you have gold number nine. And you got platinum number 10 right there. So that's coming out of Gemini, right? So what does Claude say right here? And Claude, Anthropic, Opus 4.8, what does they say? What do they say? Again, copper comes out at number one. So we're talking about shortfalls. We're talking about demand, supply, lack of substitutability, robots, all that important stuff. And then Claude actually ranks uranium as number two and silver number three. But that's a pretty similar ranking, right? So got copper, silver, uranium. So they're very important. And the uranium is tied into the nuclear power centers. But all those three looking very, very strong. And then Claude actually puts gold at number four, and then tin at number five, rare earths at number six, and then lithium number seven, and 8 platinum, 9 tungsten / antimony, and then 4 natural gas, 11 cobalt, nickel, number 12, 13 posh at phosphates, and 14 iron ore, 15 palladium, 16 oil, 17 coal, 18 agriculture, and 19 diamonds right there. So that is the analysis coming out of both AIs currently for the market. And I think it's something just to have an education around. So as always on this channel, not investment advice, not financial advice, none of that. But this is the education, right? This is the education behind demand, behind supply, behind constraints, and also the future trends, right? So think about the future trends. What is everyone going to want? They're going to want robots. They're going to want drones to win these wars, right? So if you win the wars, you master the AI, you become the global leader, right? So that is the big race that's up for grabs right now. And that's some deep research with me and you today. So I really appreciate you tuning in. That's what we're looking at long term. And hopefully you got value out of this as well. So that is today's exciting videos. So I appreciate you tuning in, and I'll see you in the next one.